Welcome back to Cinema Pursuit. Today, we're remembering the Titans.
Strong side.
Left side.
Strong side.
Left side. Strong side. Left side. You know what this team is powered by? This team is powered by soul power. That's all we got.
Man.
All we got
I'm
is
so
soul.
excited to do this pod today. This is
Bro, why you got on a Jets jersey? How about that? I've been waiting
Because
20 minutes to say that to you.
Who do you think they are? The New York Jets?
The Jets, I don't know. I have no opinions because I don't know what's going on with the NFL to like talk about them.
No, the
so.
reason I'm just wearing it because they make that off. It's funny. They make that comment in the last game they play of the season for the championship where he's like, they're playing shotgun and they're like, who do you think they are? The New York Jets? And
Oh, okay.
just a little football knowledge because I'm a football weirdo. The reason they say that is because the Jets, I'm pretty sure the timeline is up, makes sense. They had Joe Namath at the time, I think.
Oh,
And Joe Namath was the first passer to pass for 4,000 yards. He passed a ton on the Jets. So that's why they're like, who do they think they are? The New York Jets? Anyways, that has nothing to do with this, really. I'm excited to do this pod. Vikash, well, why are you excited to do this movie?
I mean, first of all, this is a 2000 movie right here, straight 2000, 24 years old, directed by Boaz Yakin. This man has not made a better movie than this. I like his movies, but he hasn't made a better movie than this.
No,
But
not even close.
I mean, we're doing this movie because the NFL season's starting, so I just wanted to do something that was topical that we really love. And we were going to see Deadpool and Wolverine the other day, and Will gets in my car, and I'm like, "Hey, guess what movie I just watched?" I was like, "The best movie, like the best sports movie." He's like, "Oh, remember the Titans?" I was like, "Yes, remember the Titans." I was like, "I don't know what Deadpool and Wolverine's gonna be after I watched just like pure cinema for like the last 2 hours. I don't know what's gonna happen." And it didn't work out for Deadpool and Wolverine. That's all I'll say. But
Yeah.
this movie is unforgettable. I think the last time I watched this movie was my dad was watching it on Disney Plus, and it got to the scene where Bertier has his accident, and I'm just like in the kitchen. I'm just like, I'm just like trying not to cry because it's like the emotion gets there, man. This movie is special, man. Like they want to talk about like corny movies and like cheesy movies, but this is a genuine movie where it's like this is my sensibility of like if you need to do a movie like this, a sports movie, do it like this or do it like Creed. You need the emotion.
Yeah, well, something about most sports movies is they're all a little corny typically. I mean, maybe you want to take Moneyball out of that equation and a few other
But
modern
bro,
ones,
but
but
but when
historically they're corny.
but when they go on the run, like the streak
Yeah.
in Moneyball, that has to be I get that counts as corny. That has to count as corny, and it is that's my favorite part of the movie
I
because
think you
I
can
didn't know
put
the
yeah.
Oakland A's story at all. I didn't know
Yeah.
what their story was.
I mean, do you just want to go run the Moneyball pod real quick? I don't even need to watch it again. We can just go.
Coming next year. Let MLB start. Let the season start.
Yeah.
150 games, real
No,
quick.
but I think you make a good point there. What makes this similar to other sports movies but better? And I would I say it's not the best sports movie of all time, but it's one of the ones outside of Moneyball that I probably return to the most because yeah, it's corny, but I think it's so you can be corny and you can be earnest at the same time. And this movie really earns what it's going for here. It really wants to wear its emotions on its sleeve and be over emotional and be a little bit in your face about it. And that's okay. Movies can do that and still be worthwhile experience and worth watching. Not everything has to be serious and nuanced and a good take on modern issues. It can just be it's a Disney movie for crying out loud. They weren't going to solve
But
racism in this
I'd
movie,
argue the otherwise that like the movie is corny and cheesy, but I think the emotions are right. It has to be this emotional because this movie is rewatchable. This movie should be on TV at like if I turn on the TV, Remember the Titans should be on TV.
There was
Just
a
because
while it was.
people need to watch this movie more because you already know what the climate is outside when it comes to like the news and
Yeah.
division and every like the hatred. And no matter what, I'm like, this movie, this is the template right here of like how you should be getting along with people. And it's bigger than black and white in the sense that like this is very much about race, but this could go to any background at
Well,
all, like across the world. Like if you don't understand people the only way you're going to understand them is if you actually have some sort of like exposure therapy. That's what this movie is, right?
Yeah, and that's a common theme throughout most sports movies is that it's about a team coming together and working together as a team to achieve a common goal. You see that in the replacements, you see that in, any given Sunday, Friday Night Lights. You see that in most movies where part of the tension is being able to work with your team and be able to, that's how you find success is teamwork. That's a common theme. And this movie does it, I would say, as good or better than all of those movies where I turn on this movie for Denzel, but I stay for the Gary and Julius relationship, those two coming together and becoming brothers in the movie and having each other's back. And this movie, even if it is over dramatic, I think that's intentional, and I think that is what makes it so good because sports is larger than life a lot of times. Things happen in sports that are, you know, they say sports is like reality TV sometimes, and that's true, especially if you follow something like the NBA. And I mean, I follow it, so I know. And so, yeah, like sports is over dramatic. Sports is, because sports is very simple, and Denzel will say this a lot in the movie, the type of stuff where it's like you win or you lose, sports, you lay it out on the field, you win or you lose. It's very simple, it's binary. And because of that, you can have these emotions because everybody's going towards a common goal. So I love this movie.
And I mean, like I told you, this movie it's Forrest Gump vibes to me. Where it's like
Yeah.
there's a lot of people who might not like Forrest Gump because it's kind of corny, it's kind of cheesy, but it works because like the emotions feel genuine
Yeah.
and the themes are there. Like this movie, I mean, yeah, we can say it's a Disney movie, but it's got themes, and
Well,
it's not exactly Boaz Yakin doing it. It's definitely the script for this movie.
comparing it to something you just did National Treasure on the pod with Pat a few episodes ago. It's a similar vibe, to where it is a little bit cheesy, but it's earnest in what it's trying to do. It's a fun movie, it's a good time, and you love the characters in it. And that's what this movie's also doing.
Jerry Bruckheimer produced it. Trevor Rabin did the music for this, and then he did the music for National Treasure also.
That's funny. Well, that
So,
makes sense then, right?
right? And
Yeah,
and the music in this is really good.
it
Besides,
is.
like, the insane amount of, like, needle drops, we're gonna
Yeah.
talk about it. This movie but that's what I'm saying, this movie has soul. This is not no
Yeah.
joke, man. This movie has soul. And there's I mean, that's why it's like I was watching the movie and usually we take notes when we're like watching the movie just to prep for this. And I could barely take notes because every 5 or 10 minutes I'm like, yes, yes, this is how you make a movie. And it's rare for me to even feel that way,
It
especially on a rewatch. Like the power was coming through for this movie.
When I was taking notes for this movie, I messaged Vikash and I was like, "I'm taking notes right now. I got half the page filled in the first 10 minutes, and it's literally just me writing quotes down. I had to stop. Even after I told him I was going to stop, I couldn't help but continue to write quotes down. Just like I had no good analysis for the most part in here. Just like, oh man, Denzel said something awesome. Let me write that down. And it's just that type of movie where every line is really well thought out and written. Every line is well delivered by not only Denzel but the rest of the cast. Everybody was able to
Fantastic
read the
cast.
script and understand how they were going to present the lines in the script. And sometimes you get a movie where everybody's kind of in a different movie when they read the script. I really love House of Gucci actually, but everybody it feels like in that movie is in a different movie. They're reading the lines, they're understanding the movie differently. This movie, I feel like you even the like there's a lot of ways this movie could have gone wrong if somebody took their lines a little too seriously, and it felt like everybody was on the same page from the beginning to end in this movie.
That's the thing though. This is the perfect example. This is a bad idea, great movie. So you know how like Lord and Miller, they make like 21 Jump Street, Lego
Yeah,
movie, Into the Spider-Verse. The things they've written, they all sound like bad ideas on paper, but the movies are really, really good.
that's a
And
good
this
point.
is what that is. This is a bad idea on paper. Like, oh, we're gonna use the undertone of racial integration for schools, and we're gonna put that as the basis for a football movie that's going to be a PG movie for Disney. How did like that sounds like such a bad idea, but it works. It
You
works
know,
so well, man. And this has to be like just for regular people. This has to be like a favorite movie of like so many people.
it is. It's I would say this is in the squarely in the dad movie category. And I
Bro,
say
this
that
is bro,
partially because my
it
dad
is.
was the one who introduced me to this movie and told me it was one of his favorites. But this is for sure a dad movie where you get Denzel, which is like what, top 5 dad actor of all time, dads love
Yup.
Denzel. You got
Yup.
football, you got, a very simplistic take on race relations in the '60s, and you have just really good action, drama, dialogue. Like, this is a dad movie through and through, and that's a good thing. I don't say that as a negative at all. I love dad movies. I love Ford versus Ferrari. I love Die Hard. We did Die Hard on the pod early on.
True.
Um, Movies like this
Ford
have a
versus
place in our
Ferrari is coming, man. I'll
yeah,
tell you that.
movies like this have a place in our culture, and I'm glad we have them. And so, yeah, I think that was a good point you just made there.
I think the movie jumped from like being a movie I really, really love to like this is one of my favorite movies of all time within the last like, this past week of like watching the movie again. And that's I'm being serious. Everybody
Yeah.
needs to watch this movie. I like people can complain all they want about this movie, but this movie has the juice. It'll never stop having the juice because everything works. This is very much like when it comes to the filmmaking, it's kind of just like, the beans. It's very much just regular stuff for the most part, but the regular stuff in this is still like 1,000 times better than the regular stuff we get today, if that makes sense. Because today the filmmaking, I don't know, it just looks off. The shot of Coach Yost, he's sitting on the tree trunk, and then his
Yeah.
daughter, like Cheryl, comes like runs over to him. I'm like, that's such a beautiful shot. I'm like, we wouldn't get this in a movie today.
The reason we wouldn't get this today is it would be mocked relentlessly when it would come out about being too naive and simplistic and corny, basically. And I think movies that were a little more fantastical and corny were more accepted back. I know this is only
Yeah,
2000, but it is 20 years ago or almost 25 years ago, actually, which is weird as crap to say. They still make movies like this. They just don't pop off and they're not as good.
yeah, because the filmmaking's not good. And
Yeah.
I was reading something. Someone was saying, "Oh, like the movie's not really like that well shot, and this and that." I'm like, "Nope, this movie is well shot. This is
I think it
well
is.
directed, edited. The soundtrack hits so like every single aspect of this movie is exactly what we talk about on this podcast for a reason. Like put Remember the Titans in the Criterion collection. Like this is how good this movie is in my opinion. And it's not solving any problems, but it's like it has elements of brotherhood, it has elements of how to be happy in this world and see other people's perspectives, and that has something to say even more as the time has gone on. And this
Y-
is not a tearjerker, like just to be a tearjerker, but it's like when that one moment happens in this movie, it works because it's like
mhm.
you actually fall in love with these characters, even though Bertier comes out in the first part of the movie and he's like, "Oh, we're not gonna play for that animal," and Denzel sitting there in the office just like, okay, this boy's about to be my boy. I'm about to be his daddy.
I want to bring
Who's your daddy?
I want to bring
You
up what
are.
you just said about the filmmaking, though, because I think that's an important point. Do you know what else the cinematographer has done? Because he's
Yeah,
not just like a. I know the director has not really done much else, but the
but
cinematographer is good.
I got yeah.
He's done Nice Guys. He did both the Sherlock Holmes movies. He did, Constantine. He did one of the Planet of the Apes, the 2001 one. And then Big Fish. Like, some of these movies maybe have varying success, like, the Fantastic Beast movies or some of these Interview with the Vampire, actually, that's another one. But at the end of the day, this is actually a good cinematographer. So when people are like, "Oh, the cinematography is not good in this movie," what did you want? I don't think this movie was supposed to be,
But I'm gonna talk
PTA
about it.
type shot movie. There's a levels to it of what you expect.
This feels like maybe if Clint Eastwood made a movie, in that sense. It's very simple. It is simple doesn't mean bad.
Yeah.
Simple just means I understand what I'm doing so well that I don't need anything else to tell
Mhm.
me. Like I don't need to be this is still formalism. This is not like a realistic movie, but like formalistic. This feels like there's art behind it, but the art isn't like, overbearing the story. The story is what's key here. The dialogue, like everything from the script is what's key in this movie
What
and the acting.
so to make a point about what you're saying too, like I watched The Holdovers recently or last year, and they do make a very specific point to shoot that like movies used to be shot, where there's a little less
Yeah.
flashiness. It's more the camera sits more, it moves less. And that taught me something that I forgot, which is m- flashiness does not equate to good filmmaking. You
Patience.
you can yeah, patience is key. You can put the camera down and you can let the scenes go. And you can have simple 1-2 cuts back and forth. You know, the greatest movies in all of Hollywood are mostly, or in old Hollywood, are just, camera back, camera at one person, cut to the other person talking, camera at one person, cut to the other person, back and forth, back and forth. And that's okay. That it doesn't have to be flashy every time.
But that doesn't mean that the work isn't good. I was watching Some Like It Hot, and Billy Wilder, like there's a car chase in the beginning of the movie with the cops, and there's some prohibition stuff going on in the movie, and it is so well shot. I'm like, oh, skip to we watched Moonstruck last night. Highly recommend if y'all haven't seen Moonstruck. Like I filmed Jill on Twitter, she recommended it. Fell in love with this
Fantastic
movie,
movie.
and you talk about like just framing, you talk about just simple shots and lingering shots, and that movie works so well within that. And it's just we need more of it. It's
Mhm,
just you have like a movie like Past Lives, Celine's Song. You
mhm.
rarely get it in movies that are, more commercial nowadays, which sucks. But it is what it is. I do want to talk about Denzel real quick though, because this is like peak Denzel right here. It has to be peak Denzel for me at least.
This is the PG version of Denzel at his best. This is Training Day, but PG. This is Denzel keeping himself in the confines of the Disney company as much as he can, but still being, an incredibly charismatic, but also frightening and also commanding presence on screen. It is, to me, in his like top five, top three, whatever performances. This is up there. Like this, and I love that about him too, because football movies. There's one thing about them always is that you have a coach. He's usually a big actor. You got Pacino, you got Gene Hackman, shoot, you got Henry
You,
Winkler. You
you
got these
got
in,
yeah.
and they
Oh
come
yeah,
in like
Waterboy.
yeah, they come in and their whole goal is just to give an outstanding, commanding performance. It's a trend in all sports movies,
Sam
and
Jackson
yeah,
in a
Sam
Coach
Jackson.
Carter.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. So this is them giving Denzel the script and saying, "Just go for it, man." And he eats up those lines better than anybody else would, man. He reads. There's lines he delivers which would just be normal for anybody else, but when he delivers it, it's like blowing my mind. It's so good.
It's like the scene when they go to the first the whatever the tryout scene when they show up in the gym, and Donald Faison's PD. He's like, he's talking a big game and all that, and he's like, ah, ha, ha, ha. And then the audio just cuts out, and Denzel walks. He runs in. He practically runs in. He's walking, but he runs in with force. He's like, "Why are you smiling? You smiling? Why are you smiling?
Is
Football's
football
fun."
fun?
Is it like, yes, sir. Yes, sir. And it's like, oh, like if and especially living in the South, like we know what this movie feels like. This we didn't have like, hard, hard butted people in like this when we grew up, but we grew up with like the era of like those people definitely grew up with that, and like they gave us a little bit of it. Like both like Coach Case, that man had a paddle in his room just for like just to remind us, like, oh yeah, like this used to be a thing. We used to, you know, slap them booties.
Yeah, it is just an all-time coaching movie performance, and they got the right guy for it. I would love to see him do another one,
Honestly,
even even with it
at
being
this
older.
age,
Yeah,
it'd be just the same. People want to complain about, oh, why's Denzel got this action in Gladiator 2? Y'all gonna watch Gladiator 2, and he's probably gonna be the best thing about the movie, even though Paul Mescal and what's his name? Whatever, the Mandalorian's in it, even with a like an all-star cast, Denzel is probably gonna be the
that
best one because
you
he's
know that
always the best.
that'd be an interesting thought experiment for another time. How many movies has Denzel been in that he's not the best part of? Because I think it's a very small amount, if any. Like I know there's probably
Yeah.
some, but it's a very small amount if you think about it. Because when he comes in, he always comes in hot and commands the screen. That is one thing that is consistent about him across all movies he does.
I'm trying to think because I can't think of one. All I'm
But,
thinking about right now is Pelican Bay shoot
yeah,
program. King Kong ain't got I'm thinking about
yeah.
that right now.
Someone will think of one and I'm sure get a like nasty comment on Twitter or something about it. But like it's rare
Have
is what
y'all
I'm
not
saying.
seen this movie from
Yeah.
Denzel? Y'all
Or
don't
like,
know
well,
about this
much ado
movie?
about nothing, she won the Oscar for 5 minutes on screen. Yeah, whatever.
Keanu Reeves.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
no much about he's in it with the dude from House and Dead Poet Society and Kenneth
yeah.
Branagh and Keanu. That movie's good.
It's a stacked cast. Yeah.
Let's get into Action is the Juice
Let's do it.
because this movie's got all the juice in a different way. Like this, like I told you, this movie is so fun to watch. Give me the first scene for Action is the Juice.
Okay. So the scene for me is the game that's about in the middle of the movie where their starting quarterback Rev gets hurt. It's when um I can't remember
It's the
the
second
character.
game.
Is that the one where he gets hurt?
Yeah,
Okay.
because that's
So
when Sunshine comes out.
the one where he basically calls Denzel a slur, that coach. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So essentially, Rev, the quarterback gets hurt because the tackle misses the block on purpose, and we get, I'll get to that in a minute. But Denzel gives that speech about taking care of 12 brothers and sisters, and then shortly says it was only eight, which is pretty funny. And then Sunshine, you see him gain his confidence, get to the huddle, tell them the play they're going to run to get their, wits about them. The linebacker comes right at Sunshine the first play. He bends down and then pops up and knocks him over. Then the music starts playing. You see everybody laughing. And then when you keep going, you get to the emotional payoff, though, of Gary going to the Denzel and saying, "Hey, I think he missed that block on purpose," and then going to his friend and being like, "Hey, you're off the team." So you get some of the joy of that, and you also get some of like the drama of him having to go tell his friend, "Yeah, you can't be on the team anymore." And it swings both ways. It kind of is a microcosm of what this movie is doing emotionally, and I just love how earnest it is, and just how him confronting his friend is like a really good capper on Gary's growth in this movie as well.
Right after that, Julius goes to his house and all that sort of stuff happens.
Yeah.
But it's very much a thing that they're trying to make sure that you see the difference. That anytime, and it's like you can, the movie is what it is, but it's like we all would, no matter what we watch, whatever art we take in or the news or whatever it is, we should take lessons, at least good lessons. And this entire movie, these conversations are not easy. These things that Berthier, among every other like, character of color in this movie is confronted with, is not easy, and they show you that. It's like, and Ray, when he comes outside to like tell Ray, it's like, oh yeah, like you're off the team. It's like, oh, like you're gonna go with them, like you're like over our friendship. That dude looks like Marty McFly to me. This every time I see him,
I feel
but I'm like,
bad because
I hate that man.
they really, yeah, he has a really hateable face, like, is, and like I feel bad for him because they casted him Affleck because he just looks like that stereotypical like old school racist guy. So
I
but he
mean,
does
it
a good
works.
job at it,
It works. It
and
works.
they show it throughout the entire movie. Whenever you see the team celebrating, he's always kind of weirdly in the back, like they don't linger on it, but he's always kind of not celebrating with the team. So they lead up to him not growing. He doesn't grow, and it kind of, you have to show that some people, like, people say this movie's not nuanced, but you have to
There's
show that some
nuance.
people don't grow. Some people don't learn. Some people will just stay racist or whatever their faults are. They'll just stay that way their whole life. And you have to show that difference, because if you just
Yep.
expect everybody to grow, then what's the point? Like,
You
if
know my
everybody
opinions
grows,
about
why do
it.
we have to put in this effort? We have to put in the effort because not everybody grows.
I think you know me. I think everybody has the potential to change if they want to change, but then on top of that, it takes some people can change at the flip of a dime. Some people it takes a little bit of time. Some people it takes a lot of time. And then obviously there's some
Yeah.
people who never want to change because they think that what they're thinking is 100% right. And
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever there's very few situations in my life where I'm like, "Hey, I guess I think I know exactly what I'm talking about." No, like there could not be a different opinion about this. That's probably not reasonable. And, you know, I could see why people think this. There's
Um,
rarely a situation like that. And this scene, it's the juice, man. The other payoff is like Sunshine getting the ball after the
mhm.
game. And you're
Yeah.
like, oh, it's like, it's because Rev taught me the slide or whatever, right? And it's
Yeah.
like you just feel the love in the locker room. And every time they cut to the locker room, there's always something going on. When Sunshine kisses Berthier, and he's like, "There's too much male bonding going on in here. I'm out of here." I'm just like, "Get out of here!"
It's like I said, it's like a good microcosm of everything this movie brings to the table. So I was surprised with myself when I was trying to when it became my favorite scene. I assumed it would be one of the others, but I just watched it and I just had a smile on my face the whole time. I just really enjoyed it.
I mean, I'm already talking about mine. Mine is like, it's like from the tryouts to the training camp. Like, I'm not even gonna
Yeah.
say one scene. It's like there's so many little pieces interspersed within that, where it's like right when they're like getting on the bus, it's like, okay, we don't need any of your people on defense. Like we've got that locked down. And like Ray's standing right behind him as like, like I'm the racist. But he's like, who's your daddy? Right. And that whole thing goes like, I was like, you ain't got no mama anymore when you get on that bus. It's like, but it's like it sells because it's Denzel, and it's like
Yeah.
he means it. Denzel's not just. It feels that's the thing about Denzel. No matter what characters he's playing, it just feels like he has embodied that character.
W-
There's a
y-
reason why he works and Mark Wahlberg doesn't work because Denzel
Well,
actually feels like he's existing in that character.
yeah, well, there's not many other actors who could deliver that line without that coming off as like menacing or making them a jerk. Denzel's
Yeah,
able to like insult you and take control in your face, like look at you and just call you basically, a word I'm not going to say because this is going to go on YouTube. And but because it's Denzel and he's got that so much charisma, you're just laughing and you're just like, yeah, Denzel is your daddy, man. You better listen.
they get into all of it where it's like, oh, everybody wants to sit at different tables and all
Yeah.
that sort. It's like, no, we're right from the bus, we're gonna sit with our teams. We're making a family here. And he asks them to get all that information from each other. And he's like, okay, let's just like I think they do the 3 days or whatever. And they come back and it's Julius and Bertier. And he's like, oh, it's like, or I'll get into it, I'll go full into it when we go to dialogues. But the entire movie they're trying to they're like I said, it is extremely confrontational for a movie like this. It's a sports movie. The sports work, but it's always the moments in between that like actually put you together. And I think that's a part of that sports culture where it's like it's brotherhood, and it's like I don't know. There's a beautiful unity that comes from it.
I think it's important you say the moments in between because one of the favorite parts of that training part you're talking about is when Lastic, the bigger
Yeah, yeah.
offensive lineman, he goes up
Ethan
to
Suplee.
Denzel. Yeah, fantastic in this movie,
Oh yeah.
especially in that training camp whole thing. He like steals the show. I feel like he goes up to Denzel and he's talking about how like he's doesn't make good grades or anything like that, and Denzel kind of whispers to him. He's like, okay, bring your grades or your papers over to me like every week. Let's go over them. We're gonna work on getting the like, and that little bit of humanity is important because the whole time you're watching the scene, the training camp, you're like, Denzel's a madman. He's like the sergeant from Full Metal Jacket out there. But then you see that bit of humanity where he's like, okay, like let me help you. Let me help you person to person, man to man. Come to my office. Let's go over your test scores every week. Let's get you on the path, and it pays off later when he gets into college. That's why when people say this is corny or they didn't put a lot of thought into stuff, they did in this movie. That little moment of humanization is crucial to Denzel's character in this movie.
I think the difference is that back then, when people really fell in love with a movie, the movie had the text for you to fall in love with it, even though you might not know it.
Hmm.
Nowadays, like when it comes to bigger movies, it's coming less and less that movies they can be corny and they have the text to support it. Because with this, I mean, you don't have to agree with Denzel, but at every point he brings up a reason why he's doing it. When during I think it's the second game when PD gets subbed out and then he goes to play on defense for Yost, he comes back. He's like, "Oh, like why aren't you treating Bertier or like Ray like this? It's like you're not giving these kids, any support by coddling them. Like he's trying to give them a full discipline upbringing, essentially within the coaching. That this is how they have to live their lives because this is literally it's life or death for for black people back then, right? And I mean, it works. It really
Hmm.
works. And like I said, you don't have to agree with Coach Boone, but he has a point.
Yeah. And I think they do a good job to show that maybe he was overdoing it a little bit early on. I don't think he's a perfect character in this. I think
No,
I think
no,
he gets the results, and that's the overall goal of the movie. But I mean, I don't think Yost is wrong when he does criticize Boone's approach early on about
100%.
he's like these are just kids. I think it's okay that it's subtextual that Boone may not is not a perfect man. They don't come out and say it, but in the subtext of the movie, it's there, and I think that's something that people might miss. But I really do think that's in the movie where I mean, he's not like super flawed, but there are parts where, yeah, like he is running these kids to death. They're high school kids, even though they all look like they're like 30. He's running them to death, like, and it works, but he's still doing that to kids.
Boone is a product of his time in most ways that it
Mhm.
matters. Like,
Yeah.
because you can't exist at that time without having a gun in your house to defend your family because you never know who's going to show up on your doorstep. You're not going to be able to exist within spaces with predominantly white individuals who all automatically hate you or want to fire you or want to like do physical, hatred towards you. There's so many different elements that this is tackling, and it's like, why are we getting so deep on Remember the Titans, man? And obviously, during like they got the scene at the during training camp where they're playing at night, right? And they finally start to get along. Like Bernier pushes Julius. He's like strong side.
That
And
first moment between them where they do the strong side, left side thing is one of my favorite moments of the field because you can see Julius is confused
that
at
is one of the
first.
best moments of
Yeah.
cinema. Period. You tell me there's not like that's like one of the greatest moments because that's how you like it. It is like I said, it's just like Forrest Gump. It's like Gary Sinise. What's his name? The guy without the legs in Forrest
Yeah.
Gump. Yeah, Lieutenant Dan. Every time he's just being like pessimistic and nihilistic, like the internal like little like cranking of Tom Hanks and Forrest is just like I'm just trying to be here, I'm just trying to do this, and he wears him down. Lieutenant Dan, it's like this movie's trying to wear us down from like what's going on outside. And obviously they get into the real world and they have to deal with those problems, but despite that they still try to be brothers in this movie.
Yeah, that scene is probably the most testosterone I've seen in a movie outside of like Top Gun,
Bro, you want to talk
which is
about
not a bad thing.
testosterone? The production value is the testosterone. Production value. Okay, my voice is crackling. Y'all heard that, right? So, some of the most impressive aspects of this movie, whether it's an artist, moment, scene, what is the production value for you for this movie? Because I've got some production value. This is hot.
Yeah, it's Trevor Rabin's score. It's over dramatic when it needs to be. It's touching when it needs to be. It's uplifting when it needs to be. It just it uplifts the more emotional moments of the scene in the movie to new heights. It's
A-
it you
And
it's
he's using
perfect
the
for what
snare
this
drum.
movie needs. Oh
He's got
yeah.
the snare drum going, and I'm like, "Is this a military movie?" Doo, 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 doo. I'm like, "Hold up." Oh,
Hey, you
that's the National Treasure score. My bad. I just went off a default. No, but
no,
seriously, like, every time like there's something happening, and it's like you hear the snares like, and it's like
yeah.
it's building up like the emotional high. And it's like I think Trevor Rabin he's not like a composer, he does other stuff. Like he's a rock, like he's got a band and stuff. So it's like the amount that this man understands of music is just insanely impressive. I love this man. We have oddly, I think he might be the only composer besides like John Williams where we've done two movies for him.
Yeah,
I don't even think we've done two John Williams movies, man.
well, I want to give him some credit here. Like he did the Armageddon score, and whatever you think about that movie, that's still a good score. National Treasure, like you just mentioned. I mean, he's still working to some degree. He did well. He hasn't done anything lately that's been too big. He's been doing a lot of TV scores, but he funny enough does a lot of scores for like movies that don't do well. But his scores are always good in them. So I don't hold that against him at all because they bring him in and he knows what his job is and he's able to uplift the movies that he does scores in even if they're not great movies. And this is
That's the
obviously a
power of music, man.
yeah.
And no, that's
There's a
great production value.
whenever that score, I was listening to the score when I was writing down my notes for this, and I was just like, whenever that really kicks up, it is just like it feels like classic movie making. It feels like a score you'd see in a Spielberg movie. That's how classic it feels to me when I listen to it.
But it's very much the scores we've been talking about. Like I talked about National Treasure, but talk about Alvin Silvestri, Back to the Future. That's very much in that same vein of
Mhm.
music. And it's that John Williams type sort of music that's very classic, something we've been hearing since the 70s. And it just I don't know if it's a throwback or it actually is a throwback. It very much feels of period to the movie. It doesn't feel like it's a new score. It's not. I'm not watching GoldenEye and I'm hearing like a techno sort of like 2000 score.
Yeah.
So it works.
Yeah, that's my most impressive piece of the film.
Bro, the football in this movie is so hype, man. They
Yeah.
shot the crap. I told you they shot the crap out of this movie. Philippe Rousselet shot the crap out of this movie. The editing is pitch perfect. But for me, it's like all the camera stuff is fantastic. Whether and the framing, the blocking. When Denzel's on the ground and they're doing, the push-ups or like they're
Yeah.
doing like the burpees or whatever it's called. And every single little setup that they have. When they're in the huddles on the field and Berthier's like trying to hype them up, you will see they do it twice in the movie where the camera they have it on like a dolly or crane where the camera comes around and then it goes back again and it's just capturing the entire like energy of that scene. And it's simple, it's effective, and it always hits every single time. And I'm like, okay, this I just love how they did this stuff. And all the football for me, someone I saw someone complaining about the football. For me, every single time someone catches a ball and then they're running, every you feel like you know what's going on. It's action filmmaking, and the action filmmaking is great in this because I can tell what's going on. I'm invested within the action itself, and it's telling a story at the same time, right? Because it's football and you have downs and you're trying to get to, your 10 yards, 15 yards, whatever. So it all works perfectly. I mean, put it this way. I don't think I knew football as much when I saw this the last time I saw this. Like, whatever, when I was younger. I definitely know it a lot more now. And I respect the football in the movie.
They get high school football right because Denzel says in the movie at one point that he runs 6 plays and they run them well or something like that. And
Yeah.
that's the thing about high school football is they don't really most high school football, they just run the ball. They do option plays, they do different handoffs, and then they probably have 1 or 2 passing plays because you can't really expect high schoolers to understand the nuances of a playbook or even have the time to learn a large playbook. So,
Yeah.
in a lot of times in movies, they don't understand that. They'll have it look like an NFL offense or even a college offense, and that's not how high school football works. So they understood that part, and then with the filmmaking you're talking about, you can actually understand what's going on with most plays, which is actually not something that's common with football movies. I still think we have more to room to grow with how we film football scenes in movies, but this
Yeah.
movie does a really good job of actually. Of you understanding what's happening within the context of the story of like when Sunshine makes a good play, it's evident and you can follow what's going on. When, he flips the linebacker over, or when they put in, I'm forgetting his name at linebacker, PD,
PD.
when they put him at
Yeah.
linebacker, you understand, or you can actually understand when Ryan Gosling's
Bro,
character,
that's what I was
Alan,
about to
is
say. How
playing
is
is
he a
horrible at cornerback.
linebacker?
But yeah, but Ryan Gosling's horrible at cornerback. I assume that's what he's playing. And you understand why though, because you watch him and he's like backing up off the line and the guy's just going right by him. At least for me, I watch a lot of football and it makes sense to me why he's screwing up the play is that he just doesn't have the speed to recover when the guy goes past him. And they do a good job of showing that.
Boaz Yakin is not American. And this man had to take a 2-week football camp before he made this movie.
Really?
He's not even a football fan, but he made one of the best football movies. And it shows. And you know what I was thinking about? When it comes to the camera movements, yeah, I'm talking about some of the bigger things, but some of the simpler things is the camera placement. It is very much closer to the ground, like you're almost
Mhm.
in line with the football players, or you're a little bit under them. Every time you see like a sideline or you're looking on the field, there's never a shot in this movie where they're above them. And, like it's not like you're watching a game. It feels like you're experiencing the game. And there's
That's
a
a good
difference
call.
between being up here and being down here. And I was thinking about, how in the NFL now they have those like the zoom lenses and they
Yeah.
have like those shots where it's like they've got really big like drop off like right off their backs with a focus. And I'm like, they're trying to make it cinematic with those cameras now. And
Have
it's
you
like, eh,
if anybody wants to see some of the best real life cinematography in a while, it's been a few years since this happened, but there's a Cordell Patterson return. I think he was on the Bears at the time, maybe, where they have the sky camera and it's kind of low to the ground because it's on that wire and it's following him throughout the
bro,
whole return at,
the wire
at
cam
a,
is
yeah,
fantastic.
and it's not like a wide shot like most football plays. The camera's following him the whole time, and it looks like something that straight could be out of like any sort of movie. It looks better than the Hines Ward returning the touchdown in Dark Knight Rises. Like it's that vibe of like it's kind of low down following him, but it looks amazing. And So I really think there's actually room to grow with how we show football in movies. The problem is that usually the people making these movies aren't football fans, so they don't understand how to show the game. They shoot it like an action scene. But this is one
I
of the
mean,
closest I've seen to it actually being shot well in a movie.
but it's like Boaz Yakin, he at least even if he didn't understand football like 100%, I think he did enough. But like he understood it to enough to where it's like, oh, we need to show these moments, and this is how you're going to invest the audience within these moments, even if they don't know how to play football. And I think that's a very interesting place to like approach this. But it's like the production value's there; it very much hits. Besides saying strong side, left side. There's some dialogues up in this movie. The dialogue is fantastic. And remember, the Titans, it is truly unforgettable. Zach, hit me with some dialogue for this movie that isn't something racist.
Yeah, you know,
Silence, dead silence. That's what you hear. Dead
no,
silence.
no, none of those parts made my top quotes. I'm gonna be honest. I wrote down 3, and I had to really restrict myself because I think I could have wrote down 20, or I could have just read the whole script. Honestly,
Read
like
the script. Yup.
So let me give you 3, and the first one's kind of a small one. So when Boone and Yost are like in the, I guess, the stairway of the schools, they're talking, and Denzel is, just tells them, "You're overcooking my grits, coach." And the way he says it, I can't even say it the way he says it. To me, it's just so classic Denzel, just like coming up with a phrasing that is just so charismatic and meaningful and funny, and just with his delivery, it's just awesome. Second one is that the first time they're just shoving each other and go left side, strong side. We already talked about that. And the third one, and that's the one I want to read, is from the scene that I gave my, action is the juice scene earlier, but I want to read the whole thing because the way that Denzel delivers it is awesome. So this is when Rev gets hurt and coach wants to put Sunshine in. Sunshine goes, "I can't make that pitch, coach." Coach Boone says, "Yes, you can. When I was 15 years old, I lost my mother and father in the same month, Ronnie, the same month. 12 brothers and sisters. I was the youngest one of them, and now I wasn't ready either, but they needed me. Your team needs you tonight. You're the colonel. You're going to command your troops. Twins right, 48-0 read. Go." And I can't even do the inflection that Denzel gives on that speech, right? But when he gets to I was fired up. I was ready to go run through a wall when he said that. I was ready to go. And that is exactly what you need from a movie like this. Just that motivational run through a wall, go help your team. You're the captain, command your troops. That's the stuff I love, man.
That's the thing. It's like I said, it's the beans. Like this is just like, this is the protein of a sports movie, but it's done correctly. There's a difference
Mhm.
between making this like dramatic and this feels almost over dramatic, and that's what you need for these movies. You can rarely have like the Creed movies where it's like what we have today. It's kind of dramatic but not over dramatic, but it really sells either way. But this works, man. And that scene obviously fantastic, but that's the part that really sells it all. That is what gets you hyped up. And then
Yeah.
you get on the field and obviously he takes down the racist, and it's awesome, man. It
It's
is
yeah.
awesome every single time. He's like, oh, like, or what is the other coach say? It's like unnecessary roughness. It's like on the
Yeah.
quarterback. It's like, bro, get out of here.
That's funny too. But just yeah, this when I just want to jump out of my seat whenever he just flips that linebacker who's trying to get at him, or defensive end, whoever it was. It's just so satisfying to see him just go pop.
They give Sunshine almost like this Bruce Lee sort of vibe.
Yeah,
And it's like, oh, I was like, I'm not taking the hits. Like, oh, I'm gonna just step out of the way for this. He's like, I'm not gonna fight you, but if I need to fight you, like if I really need to take you down, I can. Because that
yeah,
was a big dude, and Sunshine, like the actor, bro, looks so small, like in
yeah,
comparison, but he takes him right on and he gets it done.
yeah. What do you got?
I've got some juice. I got a lot of juice because I mean, it's the dialogue in this movie is fantastic, man. Okay. Special shout out to Hayden Panettiere. Like she's playing Cheryl, and that
Hmm.
little girl. Every time she shows up, she's just so funny. Besides, like the one moment of her being like super mean to
Yeah,
Denzel. Besides that, like to Coach Boone, she's awesome in this
it's a
movie.
good child
And
performance for sure.
And that's the thing. It's like usually a child performance, it might be a little too, winky dinky, but like
Yeah.
she is intense. She's like genuinely intense this
Yeah.
movie.
When she's on
And
the
when she
stand
used to be
and
like,
ticked
oh,
off.
like give my
Yeah.
daddy a hug, like she does that too. And like that has to be like one of my favorite child performances
When
now.
when she's yelling at the refs during the game that the refs are trying to screw him, it is so funny seeing her on the stands just ticked off. And it's actually meaningful too, because that's what convinces Yost to actually go over and talk to the ref and get his moment of retribution in the movie.
Talking about Cheryl, that scene, the Blitz scene, I feel bad for not bringing it up during production value because it is that scene. The brutality of the Blitz scene when they're running through all of those guys and all you see is mud and you just see bodies flying everywhere. And it's not one time. I think they show it 4 times where they're just tackling through people. It is one of the most intense things I've ever seen. And you don't even, it feels like you don't even see a face. You just see bodies just going around. And it's pure cinema. But Coach Yost in that scene, what does he say, right? It's the blitz. It's like, all right now, I don't want them to gain another yard. You blitz all night. If they cross the line of scrimmage, I'm going to take every last one of you out. You make sure they remember forever the night that they played the Titans. And they're they're doing the whole thing and he's just on the side and Yost is like, leave no doubt, leave no doubt. It's like, oh, now like I'm not with I ain't with the racist homies. Like I'm actually gonna, it's a hard choice to make in the first place, but it's like, oh yeah, like I'm not worried about my own like Hall of Fame or whatever. Like I care about these kids and what they need,
I'm
and he
I'm
ain't
glad
leaving no doubt about it.
I'm glad they gave him actually a moment, because I feel like for most of the film, like Denzel gets all the cool dialogue, but I'm glad they gave it to him because he needed to have that moment of like, oh yeah, I'm pretty good too. I got some intensity and some fire to me too, and it's an awesome line, and his delivery of it's really good too.
But I think emotionally, it's like that game, they have the force of it's not even the people that are on the field, it's the refs and it's the people that are on the football committee or whatever for the school board that they're against. And it's like the racism is off the field, but they have to deal with it on the field.
Hmm.
And you can't just have Denzel, you can't just have Boone dealing with it. We have to deal with it together because it's like like essentially Yost is a part of the problem because it's his friends causing the problem and him telling them to leave no doubt to go all out on these guys just because the refs are bad and everything else is against them says something about his character. Is like, okay, we have to be together in dealing with this. Like he says it later in the movie. He's like, oh, it's like I might as well finally join y'all, and he gives the defense to Boone at the end of, in the last game. But in that scene, it mattered that he was actually just leaving no doubt. He left no
Yeah.
doubt about where he was as a character and where they are as a team as a whole. That's the best part for me. Or not the best part. It's one of the many, many best parts of this movie because this whole movie is awesome. Another dialogue. We will be perfect in every aspect of the game. This is me when we're talking about the podcast. We will be perfect in every aspect of the game. You drop a pass, you run a mile. You miss a blocking assignment, you run a mile. You fumble the football, and I will break my foot off in your John Brown hind parts, and then you will run a mile. And it's
You're right.
like
It-
every time I was watching this, like I watched the movie 2 days ago, and then now I'm like, God, I need to get in the gym. I need to run. I need to get better. It's like Coach Boone is teaching them unity, perseverance, and respect. And it's like he's like, oh, like that's my brother. Like I need that vibe of like we gotta like get together and just like just like pump some iron or something. Like it just feels like it just hypes you up every time he does that stuff. It is hype every time I hear it.
you're right. That is you. You miss a cough, you run a mile. You miss a stutter, you run a mile.
But one of my favorite ones, the one I quote out of this movie the most more than like any of the sports ones is Alice, are you blind? Don't you see the family resemblance? That's my brother. I'm like, you know how much we have to fight to the point where it's like people just as humanity that we gotta like that we can say that to other people. And I'm just like, it hits every single time.
Yeah.
And Bert, I mean, that whole scene when Julius gets to the hospital, that's some of the best acting I've seen. And they let him act. And like you said, it's like most of the moments of the juice goes to Denzel. But when it needs to be somebody else, when it needs to be like Wood Harris, as Julius, going like, what happened? Like, don't tell me that. Don't tell me that. It's like I don't even want to talk about it because I'll start crying because he's that good in that scene. And that's the only scene in this movie where it's like you really have to emotionally act. And they never go sobby, they never go tearjerker, but they hit the line, they go right up to the line, and then they really hit it. They get to that touchdown perfectly
Yeah.
for that scene. And then a little bit further after that, when they're about to play the final game, and everybody's like around the bed with Bertier, and Coach Yost is like, I think this is a very good time for prayer and reflection. And Bertier cuts him off. He's like, Coach, I'm hurt. I'm not dead. And I'm just like, thoughts and prayers. What's going on? I'm like, this is actually relevant to like, what's going on right now.
Yeah, no, that's a good one too. They really give some of the best lines of the movie in that hospital room. Like it's funny and it's heartwarming and heartbreaking. Well, a lot of times that scene could end up being kind of corny. And I mean it is over dramatic, but you could say it's corny, but I think it's a payoff. The relationship between those two is developed well in the movie. So when it finally happens, it doesn't feel cheap to me at all. It feels earned.
It's earned because of how it starts, right?
Yeah.
They start fighting in the when because they're roomed together. They start fighting there about the
Yeah.
poster where from the Olympics when the guys they've got the hands up on the podium. They got their fists up on the podium, and then literally he mirrors it back to Julius when he's in the hospital, and he's like, yeah, it's like, yeah, I know I've changed. I know I'm better for it. Even after I've been paralyzed, I'm better for it. But the scene where it actually starts, and it is right after they're doing the 3 days, or Bertier says, "Listen, I'm Gary, you're Julius. Let's get some particulars over and just get this over with." And Julius is like, "Oh, particulars." It's like, man, no matter what I tell you, you ain't never gonna listen to nothing about me. Bertier, listen, I ain't running any more of these 3 a days. Julius, well, what I gotta say, you don't want to hear, because honesty ain't too high up on your people's priorities. Bertier, honesty. You want honesty? Honestly, I think you're nothing. Nothing but a pure waste of God given talent. You don't want to listen to nobody, man. Not even Doc or Boone. Shiver push on the line every time, and you blow right past him. Push him and pull him and do something, man. You can't run over everybody in this league. Every time you do something, you leave your teammates hanging out to dry. Me in particular. And then Julius with like the corny lines, like, why should I give a hoot about you? That's PG Disney right there. It's like, huh? Or anybody else out there. You want to talk about the ways you the captain? And Birdie is like, right, I am the captain. I was like, you got a job? Birdie is like, I got a job. You've been doing that job? And then Birdie is like, I've been doing my job. Then Julius is like, why don't you tell your white buddies to block for Rev better? Because they have not blocked for him worth a blood nickel, and you know it. Nobody plays, including yourself. I'm supposed to wear myself out for the team? What team? Nah, I'm going to look out for myself, and I'm going to get mine. And Bertier says, see, man, that's the worst attitude I ever heard. And Julius says the big thing, attitude reflects leadership, Captain. And it's like,
Yes.
that's like a whole thing of like, this is like, if you actually want to have a conversation with anybody in life in general, and you have to get to a hard place with them, you have to have intense conversations like this where you're actually saying something that's, relevant. Like, oh, it's like, I see this is wrong, but you need to do something about this so you get better. And they're both arguing that towards each other. And it works. I mean, I'm like, yeah, it's about race and it's really heavy, but it works. Why does
And
this work?
that's the best exchange in the movie, actually. I didn't put it on mine because I thought it might be too long, but you just delivered it perfectly, and I'm glad you did because your attitude reflects leadership. Captain is a just incredible cold line to drop, and I think a million other movies could also have that line, and it would make sense. It's a fantastic line about how leadership it involves accountability not just for yourself but for everybody else as well, and you can't hold some people accountable and others not accountable, which Yost has that same issue later on too. So yeah, that's probably I know I already said what my favorite scene was. That's probably my other favorite scene. It's a
Because
fantastic dialogue there. Yeah.
it's like 2 minutes of them just talking there, and it's just right. It's very simple, very well done, but it packs in the juice of like how are we supposed to tackle this conversation. Just it's a simple conversation, but it's like one of the most intense conversations, because right after this, they actually get better, they actually do better, and they try to, actually like become friends. And I've had it happen in real life where it's like, you sometimes with certain people, especially some older folks, like you have to get through the crap before you can like have a copacetic relationship with them. It happens. And I'm like, oh, I see where the writing is just, it really is there.
Yeah.
The last little dialogue I got though is, I think it's after the first game, and Bertier's girlfriend, paid like Kate Bosworth's character, and all the white friends, they're like in the car, and they're like, oh, like we're going up to the place, and everyone is gonna be there. It's like, not everybody's gonna be there. All the white people are gonna be there. And she says to Gary, it's like, what are you trying to do, Gary? And Gary says back, he's like, you just got to pick it up and run with it. She tells him, like, we're not running in the same direction. And she's like, standing up for what you believe in is all and well and good, but you really got your priorities mixed up. And Bertier just walks away, like, to join the guys, after the game. And it's like, that's the same thing we've been talking about. It's like, not everybody's going to change. She comes around later in the movie, but it doesn't mean that everybody else, all their friends, Ray, doesn't mean everybody came around.
Yeah, I didn't like that subplot, to be honest. The racist girlfriend subplot. I mean, I don't think the handshake at the end is really a good payoff,
No,
and
I do. You know
I
what I
don't
was
like
thinking
it.
about?
Yeah.
When the handshake happens, I was like, why aren't you at the hospital?
Well, it's just like, okay, yeah, it takes your, boyfriend becoming paralyzed from the waist down for you to decide you want to respect black people. That's just, I didn't, that whole part, like, I'm not going to harp on it, but I didn't love it.
No, no, no. I see it more from like Bertier's perspective, where
Yeah.
it's like he has to swim up the river against all the hatred to just exist. And that's what people of color, like black people, have had to do in America for God knows hundreds of years, right? Even after they say like, oh, slavery ended, but it's like you still had Jim Crow, you had all these rules, and you wanted to make sure that these people were not counted as just regular human beings. And even to this day, those things mess up people. And I mean, it's still relevant. The movie's set in like 71, but 2024, it's still relevant. It's more relevant than me watching like The Godfather, even though The Godfather's, relevant.
Hmm. You want to
But
get to it?
soul power. We got soul power. The Layla. This movie, this goes in line with the School of Rock. This has to be one of the best soundtracks I have ever heard. Like, it's even to the point where it's like there's when they're having the picketing scene and they're playing Creedence Water like Revival. And I'm like, y'all need to get out of here with that. Because they do the needle drop in, I think, in Forrest Gump and in Apocalypse Now with Credence. And every time it comes up, like, oh, this is the 70s, like something revolutionary is going on here.
I'm kind of mixed on the soundtrack, to be honest.
Really?
I can't tell if it's supposed to be this as obvious as it is on purpose or not. Like in Forrest Gump, I really feel like the soundtrack is obvious on purpose. Like,
This is
they're
obvious
paying,
on purpose. It has to be.
they're playing the Vietnam songs during, the Vietnam scenes, and it's like it makes sense.
Yeah.
So my Layla is the Ain't No Mountain High Enough locker room scene, and
Same.
I still cannot figure out if that's being done in jest or if that's an earnest, like, we're solving racism, ain't no mountain high enough. I don't know. And to be honest, it doesn't matter to me because
I think it
it's a
means
good needle drop and I really enjoy it in the movie. But as a whole, I can't tell you the soundtrack. I don't know my feelings on it, to be honest.
I think it's Ain't No Mountain High Enough in the sense of like the group themselves, that they're all together now as a team,
Yeah.
and that there's nothing as a team that they can't do together. And you could bring that to like real life or like brotherhood of like, humans across the world. You can go as big as that, but it's very much just, at least like, we've gotten across the lines of like division and hatred, that we're together as a team now. We're going to deal with this together. And it's like the action of it is when they're in the hallway, and the whole fight happens when they're picking on him, and Bertier and Julius are in the hallway, like literally having to be the coach, like the refs of
Yeah.
like break it up and like get the racists one way and the black people the other way. And it's a whole thing, and it hits right. But it's like, no, but that whole scene, that whole locker scene of like right before that, they're doing the yo mama jokes. And
Yeah.
what
Oh,
happens,
that's
right?
good.
It's like they're not even there yet. It's like, oh, it's like, like Blue's like, oh, with like like Bertier, like, I took your mama out the other night. And it's like Julius has to hold him back because Bertier doesn't understand that he's just ripping on him for no reason.
Yeah.
And he throws one, he lobs one back at Blue, and they're just doing yo mama stuff. And then
That's a
Elastic comes out of nowhere. He's like,
yeah.
dang, like, yo, mama weigh twice as me. And then it just cuts, and then it's like everybody's laughing, and then it cuts to Ain't No Mountain High Enough.
No, no, no. Like, I totally love that scene. I was just talking about the comment you made about the soundtrack as a whole. I think using
Yeah.
that in that scene just fits the tone of the movie. So yeah, I think it's a good choice, and I have the same Layla as you.
But it's like every time it's like Elastic singing like The Temptations and everybody's singing with him, or when the first whatever the tryout scene, they're singing a little bit. There's a lot of singing in this movie. It's like I think the movie feels there's a spirituality to the music. The musicality possesses the movie and it brings the movie alive. And it's like there's a way of doing it where it works, and there's a way of not doing it where it doesn't work. The recent Twisters movie, good movie, but there's too much music in the movie because you're putting in a soundtrack, they're just throwing it in there. It works for some things, but at other moments it's like, why do y'all just have music in here just for music's sake? Suicide Squad 2016, the David Ayer one. They do it quite a bit, and you can see where there's like a commercial reason why they're doing it. Whatever. This doesn't feel commercial. This feels like it's genuinely in the moments. And whether it's like they start singing like Amazing Grace at some point, I think in the movie, and
Yeah.
all that stuff works. Like one of the best parts of the movie, man, is when they come out for the second game. It's like we're gonna warm up a little
Oh,
differently
yeah.
this time. Everywhere we go, and I'm like, wait, is this the Frosted Flakes
I
commercial?
know, dude. My brain's poisoned for
People
being like
wanna know
that was like the first I heard it during the Frosted Flakes commercial, which
who we
I don't
are.
even think people who are, like, younger than, like, 20 know what I'm talking about, but
Yeah,
that
I
was,
know,
like,
right?
everywhere. Every commercial when I was growing up, they had that parody of it, and I knew the parody before I actually knew the movie, which is kinda funny.
We are Titans. Mighty, mighty Titans. And see, so we finally got to talk about it. We went to like our middle school. We were the Titans, and the shirts that they're wearing in the movie, like the coaches, like Yost and Boone are wearing, that burgundy red was literally our school's uniform. And
Yeah,
you
same
cannot
colors.
tell me that they didn't watch Remember the Titans and then just like choose everything about our
Well,
school.
and what was significant about our school too, and they weren't the Titans back then, but it was one of the first African American schools in where we are. It actually is
Yep.
when they eventually tore down our middle school because so it started this African American school and eventually became another school that was, that we attended. And when they tore down the school that we attended back then, they still kept the building for the where the I think it was called Pearl Lee Smith School.
Pearly
They
Smith.
kept the Pearl Lee Smith building because the other stuff was added on later as like a historic site, and they moved
Because it
Oglethorpe to like
is,
a
and it's
another
like
thing.
I I grew up knowing like a woman. She probably passed away when she was like 95, but she literally worked in that school. Like it's literally it's just four classrooms, and it's probably the smallest school you've ever seen. And that's where she used to teach kids. And like I said, she was very old, and she was not teaching when she was teaching when she was young, and it was in time before integration, and it sets the tone for us in a real life way where it's like we spent a whole year of our life within those halls, and like everyone's like, oh, it's haunted. No, it's got history because it's real history of like the hardships that people had to go through just because they see the skin color rather than the human. And this movie hits on that too. And I do want to say this movie does not solve the problems. It's just it's a really good story about how you can have the possibilities of solving problems in this world. That's all it
Yeah,
is. So I was like, I ascribe to this movie, but I don't think it's perfect for that. But like I said, music. We got soul power. Soul power runs the Titans. It'll always run the Titans. I'm telling you, man. I had to go through on Spotify and I was like, ad, ad, ad. I've heard this song, ad. I've heard this song, ad. I added a lot of songs from this soundtrack because I do love this era. Like all the music that they're playing. This is all. Most of it is, from people of color, and these people their music has inspired so many people, the Temptations,
mm,
everybody else in between, to what we have today. And this music never gets old. I'll tell you that. That's what it is. It very much is a time capsule like
yeah,
soundtrack. Just for me, like the same way I was watching School of Rock and I was like, oh yeah,
yeah,
I like rock music. Yeah, this is like, oh, I already love funky music, but like this got some real good funk music in it too.
yeah. No, this is the soundtrack is pretty Americana, similar to how, like you said, Forrest Gump is in that way.
Iron Claw was too. That's the one that we
Yeah.
did too. But let's get into recasting a movie because remember the Titans had a great cast, but You know who should have been this movie? Zach, let's recast somebody in Remember the Titans because apparently we got to recast the perfect movie. What's going on?
Yeah, so I only had one because honestly, I don't want to recast any of the players, and I'm not recasting Denzel. So I want to recast Will Patton. Not that he did a bad job in the movie, but
Yeah,
I had a good idea when I was watching it. So he was Coach Bill Yost. So
yeah.
I would swap out Will Patton with Woody Harrelson. He would have been the right age at the
Bro,
time.
what?
Yeah, he would have been the right age at the time. He can pull off the kind of racist thing, of course. He's got that kind of He's really good at working with other actors. I'm thinking back to True Detective, how he bounced off McConaughey so well.
Bro,
I think
Wesley
Woody
Snipes and him in White Man Can't
Yeah,
Jump is
exactly,
fantastic too.
exactly.
He knows how to do
Yeah,
like fiery relationships where it's like
yeah,
we're not, gonna walk away from each other, but like I know how to be like angsty with the person right next to me and get along with them at the same time.
yeah, and it would be a different role because Yost is actually kind of like a Nick Saban-y type, like,
Yeah.
doesn't not not that Nick Saban's not outspoken, but very much like, you know what I'm talking about, that type of man,
I know
and
exactly
Woody
what you're talking
would
about.
probably be a little bit more of a country type of man, which is kinda what you would think about
Yeah.
where this movie takes place. He could do the Alabama country type coach, and I think the dynamic between them because the problem about Will Patton in this movie is that Denzel blows him off the screen, and part of it's the script and part of it's Denzel, and I think Woody Harrelson would be able to hang with him a little bit more in those confrontational scenes between the 2 of them, and be able to really make their relationship more dynamic in the movie.
They give him enough to work with, but he's never overbearing on screen.
Mhm.
Besides, like you said, the blitz screen or
Yeah.
I just said blitz screen as if I'm trying to say blitzkrieg.
Hey,
No, but
hold up, bro. You got something on your glass.
it's fog.
Oh, okay.
It's
Okay.
getting hot up in here. I've been talking about soul power getting to my soul, man. That's what it is.
Okay.
It's hot.
Sorry, you can keep going.
'Cause, I mean, I'm trying to think if there's any like '90s actors because it's like if you cast like a Tommy Lee Jones in that role, Tommy Lee is a little bit too old for that role, isn't he?
And he's almost a little too overpowering, I think. He would take the movie from Denzel in some ways, and I don't think you want that.
Because you want someone Southern, and I mean, I can think of like,
Incredibly southern.
bro, Will Patton should have been Matthew McConaughey. Matthew McConaughey and Denzel.
I
Think
see.
about it. Think
Matthew
about it.
McConaughey. Well, and this is kind of part of the Woody Harrelson problem, though, and definitely McConaughey. You can't have too much charisma as the Yost role, and that might actually be why Woody.
Hold up. You didn't know that racist people can be charismatic? You didn't know that?
I,
You
I'm just talking
you ain't
about
told me
this
that
role.
Calvin Candy ain't charismatic?
I'm talking about this role. I'm talking about this role. But
But
yeah,
you
I
get
get
what
what you're going
I
for. That would be another guy, but he would have been too young at that point, I think, though.
yeah, if you wanted someone who could play the understated a little bit but have the trauma of it, you want like a John Travolta. John Travolta could be he's
He's too
of that
weird,
he's
though. I mean, at that, in the
what you mean by
2000s,
that?
he's too
What you
weird by
mean?
the time we get to 2000, that I get what you're I know I'm just shooting down everything you're saying, so that's not good podcasting. I'm sorry. But there's probably other people that I'm just not thinking of right now who would be great at this.
The perfect person for it though is Sam Shepard. He's in Mud
Yeah.
and he would have been the right age. He's been in some movies, but he used to be a playwright among other things. He's in the right stuff. You've seen that. He's a southern guy, but he's got the touch and pull of like he can be charismatic, but he can also be someone that you're kind of rooting against at the same time. But yeah,
That's
I
what you
mean, I
kinda
love
need.
Will
Yeah.
Patton, man.
Yeah. And Will
Sam
Patton's
Shepard,
not bad in
he's
this.
good.
I
He's
wrote
good.
in my notes that I was impressed by Will Patton when I was watching this, more impressed than I've been in
And
previous. I
it's
don't know if the age would have been right, but Steve Zahn, I feel like, could have nailed the part.
Steve Zahn was like in his
He's
lower
probably too
20s.
young. Yeah, he's too young at that, but
That's like
right
saving
now, Steve
Silverman,
Zahn would
Steve Zahn.
yeah. Right now, he would murder that part, man.
Steve Zahn would be good.
Okay.
That'd be a good cast.
Okay, who do you got, though? Who do you got?
Bro, I ain't got nobody.
How many pods am I
I
gonna do with you where you don't do that? I gotta start killing this category? Well, come on, man. Come
but
on.
I think this is a movie where you can't argue it. Like for me, it's like Denzel. Like who else you gonna have do that? And
No, well,
I don't
yeah.
want to be like, oh, Coleman Domingo is gonna be
So
playing that role in a 2020 movie because it's like
well,
that
okay,
would happen.
I think that's a good discussion to have. Is there another black actor at that time who we think could have done that role?
Morgan Freeman, but he's too
No.
old.
No. Yeah, too old at that point. And he doesn't have that same fire. He's more of like that kinda it would be a different movie.
And then you talk about, like, let's say Wesley Snipes, that's someone who came up in my head, and I'm like,
That
Wesley's
that
too
would
he's
Wesley
got
would
too
make
much
sense.
sauce.
Yeah, Wesley would make sense. I mean, outside of that,
Will
Sam
Smith
Jackson, we've already done.
wouldn't work.
Will wouldn't work with Will Smith. Lawrence Fishburne, maybe, but I don't know. He doesn't come off as a football coach to me. Carl Weathers probably could have done something with it.
Ooh, Carl Weathers. Yes, yeah, no, RIP. RIP to the
Yeah.
big man because he could have done the crap out of that. This morning, I was thinking about it. I was like, they should have had a dap up like he and Arnold had in Predator. I was like, that's the only thing this movie's missing right there. Like, that's, I was thinking about Carl Weathers this morning.
I you know, I this is
He's
way
got
going
heart.
off, but I kinda am disappointed we never got, like, the Eddie Murphy sports movie where he's, like, a head coach. I feel like there's a comedy
It
there
ain't
where
late.
he woulda just
It ain't too
he
late.
he still can, yeah, he woulda not this one specifically, but I feel like every like, good comedy actor should do sports comedy, not that they make a ton of them anymore, but I feel like he would just nail it. Like, a Longest Yard
I
remake,
was
put him in there.
I was thinking about Robin Williams and Philip Seymour Hoffman, as we always do. I'm like,
It's just second
like
pot of
obviously
bringing them
Philip
up.
Seymour
Yeah,
Hoffman got Moneyball, but I
yeah.
mean, did Robin get I don't know
Oh,
if he
I
got a
don't
sports
know.
movie.
I'm gonna look that up
At
'cause I'm
this
not
rate, we got to
sure.
throw Seth Rogen into a coaching role.
Oh gosh. It says he was in something called The Best of Times. I've never seen that. It has Kurt
It was the
Russell too.
best of times, and it was the worst of times.
It's but
Kurt
I don't know if
Russell
he's
has
like he is in
Miracle.
this. It looks like a college movie.
Miracle was good.
Miracle, yeah. No, he wasn't in one. He would have been really good. He's good in any inspirational role though. That's why like I feel like great actors either need to do a role where they're a teacher or they're a coach, right? Give them one of the two. And Robin Williams did the teacher one because that is when you get to just come in and just like Paul Giamatti did in The Holdovers recently, where you get
Yeah,
to come in and just you get the movie's on you, brother. Take the movie, go ahead and do it, you know? And that's exactly what he does.
I don't know if actors feel this way, but I feel like actors in general have such a zest for their work that they inherently have to be inspiring, because if they're not inspiring, then you're not going to believe what they're saying, and their
Yeah.
entire job is to make sure that you believe what they're saying. And Denzel is one of the best to ever do that, man. I'm glad he did this movie. You talk about casting, if he didn't take the time to do this movie, because he did this, he did the Great Debaters, he directed the Great Debaters too, and he obviously has a reason for doing these things. He wants to have positive movies about for black culture to have, and these movies matter. Yeah, we might watch some of these movies in school, but that's the whole point, is that like this movie gets shared. And Denzel, he's made the R-rated dramas, he's made Glory and things like that, he's done Crimson Tide and everything else under the sun besides maybe a comedy. This might be Denzel's comedy, but like that, I mean,
Yeah.
props to Denzel. He's not my MVP for the movie. I'll say that much, okay? Even though Denzel is always an MVP.
Well,
Soapbox. You got any soapbox takes about Remember the Titans, man?
I've already kind of talked about it, but I just want to give my final take on this spiel that we need to give more grace to corny films that tackle serious subject matters. Like, yeah,
Yep.
Remember the Titans didn't solve racism, but like this movie was never going to do that. It's a feel good story about how sports brought together a town divided by race. It's okay that the movie wasn't do the right thing because I don't think it ever sought to be that in the first place. At the end of the day, it's a Disney movie. It's supposed to be a movie that you feel good about. You know, it's okay to have feel good movies that aren't like the most nuanced about a subject, and it's okay to enjoy them. And you don't need to feel bad about enjoying something that doesn't check all the boxes of what a movie about race is supposed to be. That's my soapbox on this, honestly.
And that's what Three Idiots, the director who made that, it very much falls into the same line of work that he does. And I keep mentioning Forrest Gump because Forrest Gump is a good example of it. There's a movie called Patch Adams with Robin Williams and Philip Seymour Hoffman, where it almost the tear jerkier, like the emotionality of the movie almost gets a little too far into the emotion. Obviously, like Robin Williams brings such heart to that role, and he's great in the movie, but there's a fine line of like weaving one of these movies, and this movie does it right. And it's like this movie is 24 years old. Have we seen another movie like this? There's a lot of football movies that have come out that are good, but like I'm not watching like the Kurt Warner movie, and that's not gonna That's a biopic more than a football movie, and it's like y'all aren't making good football
This
movies anymore.
this
We
no,
don't have
they're not.
what's the last sports movie that we had that was actually good? Like,
Oh
genuinely.
god. Okay,
We
I wanna
need
look
better
this up
sports
now.
movies, man. Like, it sucks that we don't have good sports movies
Because
because
I hope
I
it's not Moneyball.
okay,
No, we
we
just
had
had
Creed.
Challengers. We just had Challengers, and we just had
But
Iron Claw.
Challengers is a whatever. It's a polyamory movie. It's not even a sports movie.
Well, okay, true, but then, remember the time.
I can understand the okay, it is about tennis. It is 100% about tennis, but it's kind of not about tennis. Like Remember the Titans is I think Remember the Titans is kind of not about football, but it is 100% about football though.
Well, it's about how sports brings people together. That's important to talk about. I think in terms of just football, we haven't had a good football movie in a long time. In terms
And
of
you talk about
sports, I think
Creed.
we do get them. Yeah.
Creed 1, 2, and 3 were really good, but they're about boxing, but they're not about boxing at the same time. Because it's about Donis and his struggles, and it's really good.
Wait, we
But
just had a great football movie, 80 for Brady.
what?
I'm kidding, I'm kidding.
Wait, what? What movie?
Said 80 for Brady.
I watched 80 for Brady, okay? I
You
did
did? Why?
because I support my women.
You
I
got
don't
a
know what else to
problem,
say.
man. You got a this
What?
is like a drug
I love
addiction.
all
Why are you
those
watching
women.
80 for Brady?
All of those women are fantastic, and the worst
Yeah,
person in
but
that movie was Brady.
watch any other movie with them. Like,
Bro, you ain't rocking with Jane Fonda?
I'll walk
You
I'll
got a
rock
problem?
I'll rock with one of her other movies, Not that one.
Oh, you're gonna turn on Barbarella instead, or actually, Clute with Donald Sutherland. She was fantastic. They named the movie after Donald Sutherland's character, but it's her movie, and it's like,
Yeah.
what were y'all doing in the '70s? Like, y'all can't name a new movie after a woman because it's literally her movie.
Oh, what was your soapbox?
I recommend to everybody who listens, watch Remember the Titans again. It doesn't matter to me if you hate the movie or like, you have lukewarm feelings about it, but like this movie is genuinely a good time and it's trying to push forward themes that I don't even think the Disney company would push forward nowadays. Like,
No, something I wanted to add, and I didn't know where to put it. The language they use in this movie, the racist language,
oh
Disney
shoot,
would never
shoot.
Disney would never put that in a movie today, especially a PG one. But I don't think it's a bad thing. Like I think having that, I think when you sugarcoat racism too much and don't put the language that was used by racists during the time, you start to create an alternate reality. And I think that you have to have that language in a movie like this, or otherwise you're sugarcoating it to a point. It's already a little sugarcoated the movie, but you're
I
sugarcoating it to a point where it's offensive. I think if you don't have the type of language that would have been directed at black people at that time,
I wonder what Spike Lee thinks about it because
Oh, he probably doesn't like it, and I don't blame
he
him.
but I don't know about that. I think he would like it because he has a problem with Django Unchained, which I understand his problem. I don't agree with him, but I 100% understand his problem. But I think he would be fine with this because it's not it's not crossing negative lines in a sense. It's using the c word a lot, and I think that's a good thing because they're showing how hateful these people are. They call like Bertier literally calls Denzel and he calls everybody. I'm not playing for that animal. Like I think it's a good thing to show that even in a PG sense that racism exists and just because you're not cursing or something like that, it doesn't mean that you're not being a terrible human being. You're not
Well,
being a human by not seeing my brother as an equal human being, right?
yeah,
So
I
I
think
think
it's
it
more.
it, it tackles it correctly in my
Yeah,
opinion.
well, I think it's more damaging. Like I can't remember what the movie was, but recently there was a movie that involved cops, and when they were talking about, I don't know, sex workers, essentially, they were using the term sex workers to talk about them, and I'm like, I don't think cops from like the 80s would be
Sex
using words that
workers.
are a lot more offensive and not used nowadays about sex workers. You can't go backwards to a movie. Even some modern movies should be a little bit more racist and unoffensive or offensive in the language they use, because when you start to sugarcoat that stuff, you really start to create an alternate reality that doesn't exist. You need it's
It's
There's a
like saying
line, but
that
you need to
it's
reflect what the
the
reality of
art.
what that was.
Yeah. It's like, oh, we're just because the MPAA, we're not gonna say that. It's no, it'd be the equivalence of like, oh, we're gonna take slavery out of the books. We're gonna say that evolution
Yeah.
doesn't exist or something like that, or just popular examples, not getting into anything crazy, but it very much feels like they hit the tone with this, and it's not really doing any disservice to it. And it's like you said, it it works for the era. And for me, when I was watching The French Connection, I had to turn it off because Gene Hackman and Roy Scheider, fantastic actors, great movie. But the way they're at the beginning of the movie, they catch up, they're playing detectives and they go and they're essentially just doing police brutality to a guy and they're trying to find like a drug dealer and they're using the N word and then all these things are happening and it just violently turned me off of watching the movie. I could probably go back and watch the movie, but like I was just like especially just with what's been not what's been happening recently, but it's what's been coming forward because we have social media and cameras and all this. It's like and it's literally just happened again, and because it just keeps happening, and that's a whole other thing. But it's like you see the effect of like this, like it was just Will Friedkin being true to the 70s. That's all it was.
Yeah. No,
And
I it's okay to be uncomfortable with that stuff. Now,
yeah,
on the other hand, I think that stuff, there was a big problem when I think it was maybe Amazon who removed that part from the movie. And I think that's
yeah, that's wrong.
unacceptable, completely unacceptable. I think that art is something that should not be tampered with to protect the what's the word?
Like you said, it's sugarcoating.
So,
It's
yeah. You
you're
shouldn't
smoothing over the rough edges when the
yeah.
rough edges are exactly what need to be there.
Art should not be something where you remove those rough edges, essentially, is what I'm saying, and I think you see that problem in modern filmmaking where it's like a boardroom's making the decisions for the films
Okay,
and not a director where they smooth it over like that.
throw in a trigger warning. I'm fine with that. They have like when you turn on, at least I think it's what is it? I think it's Disney Plus. When you turn something on, it'll show you what the rating is, right? Or they'll have little like
Yeah.
messages. Sure, throw that
That's
in
a
there.
fine compromise, honestly, like, I'm okay
That's
with that.
fine. But besides that, and even that can be like spoilers for a situation, which is I don't whatever. But like, yeah, do that. Don't
Well,
cut out scenes from your
and if
movie.
and if the movie is truly offensive, then good, leave it there and let people watch it and make that decision. Don't make the decision for people what's offensive and what's not because you're gonna get it wrong. And with art, I'm always very protective of art, and this isn't even a political thing. This is kinda, this is just
Censorship.
I don't think art should be censored because I think the once you start doing that, it starts to become and I'm sure, I'm not even gonna clip this, put in a reel to be honest, because if someone's gonna
No.
see this and they're gonna get the wrong idea. So I just wanna
Yeah.
say it here fully so people understand. I don't support language that I don't support racist language, I don't support sexist I don't support any of that. I don't think it's cool to use. But what I do think is that movie is an art form and movies should reflect real people and real times. And to do that, you have to use stuff that's offensive because people in the world will say stuff that's offensive and vulgar and wrong. And if you sugarcoat movies, you're not properly reflecting reality in your movies.
Then it just becomes, it becomes vanilla. And we're
Yeah.
not watching movies for vanilla
And funny
because
enough, it becomes a Disney movie about race, which is this is a Disney movie about race, but they include all that. But if you look at anything in the last while from Disney, they steer away from it as much as they can.
the the only movie that they've made recently that kind of deals with it is McFarland USA with Kevin
Yeah.
Costner, where he's playing a coach for essentially an all Mexican cross country team. And they're literally, I think they're children of migrant workers or like, farmers and Mexican farmers. And they are, on this running team. And there's a lot of adversity they have to deal with, just like this movie. It maybe doesn't hit as well as this movie, but it definitely is one recently that I would recommend to people. But even then, it's like, Disney's gotten a bit of, I mean, it's like you don't have to use racist terms against Mexicans to show that, that they're facing adversities from other people. It's very much a thing of like, oh, they have more money than you, they have more time than you. And then that means that these people have more opportunities, therefore, to be better at sports and things like that. And other
I
people, it's like this is the only way they can get out. Because we went to school with people that literally like they have physical abilities to where they can get scholarships and go to better schools, and that's going to help them.
Yeah. I don't want to talk about this anymore because I'm just another white guy talking about racism.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
this is probably all going to come out
Let's talk.
wrong.
Let's talk about the board of white people, the Oscars. Let's talk.
Yeah. Let's talk about white people. No, let's talk about the Oscars. So,
No, this is 2000. So
yeah,
this is the gladiator year. So
this is
you
the
tell me
gladiator
what's
year.
going on.
Well, so yeah, I mean, honestly, we don't need to spend much time on this because I looked it up And really, this probably shouldn't have won for anything. It didn't get any Oscar noms. It's the Gladiator year. Any category, for the most part, this would have been competing in. You Gladiator had a better score. Gladiator had a better Best Actor performance, probably a better director. And I don't even know if they won director for Gladiator, but it won Best Picture. Um,
Soderbergh for Traffic.
Okay. Oh, but you know what I mean? I just kinda glanced at it. I would
Yeah.
say maybe score and best actor should have been nommed. Those categories had room for Remember the Titans to get nom, but this movie was never gonna be a nominated movie. This was not made for that. This was made to be a family movie, surprisingly enough about racism, but a family movie that people were gonna go see in the theater. This wasn't trying to compete for awards.
But I think it's better than most of these movies. You have a Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. You
Yeah,
have
that was that year
Gladiator.
too. Mhm.
But these are movies I think I hold to the same standard. I think Gladiator is just a tad bit better than this. I've seen Gladiator much more than this, but it's like that's the level of work that's going because Gladiator is an emotional movie for me too. We're gonna talk about it this year. But yeah, it doesn't need to be at the Oscars, but it's more relevant than most of these movies will ever be. Put it that way, because no one's talking about Traffic and Aaron
No.
Brockovich. If I'm talking about Steven Soderbergh, I'm talking about Oceans. Okay, I'm talking about Logan Lucky.
Well, for a football comparison, though, the Oscars are interesting maybe because it's a Hall of Fame, and Hall of Fames in sports usually get it wrong. But what's interesting is seeing their decisions and then debating them, and it kind of keeps the debate about art alive in some ways. And so that's why we go over it here. But this is just not one that makes sense in the Oscar conversation. This is not an Oscar type
And
movie.
we'll talk about it when we get to Gladiator. But Hans Zimmer, Ennio Morricone, John
Yeah,
Williams are
it's a
nominated.
goaded list.
Even the cinematographers is a goaded list. So
Mhm.
it's like
It's a good list.
we'll talk about it when we get to it. So on to legacies because this movie, there's a lot of interesting people in this movie. I'm gonna go right off the top with Boaz Yakin, who is the director of this movie, and I'm probably butchering his name. But this man he's a pretty decent, like he's got some good juice. He had this movie Safe with Jason Statham action movie. He wrote Now You See Me, like the magic movie. He's got some interesting like writing credits and he's got some interesting directing stuff, but it's nothing too crazy. I think this is his best movie. We already talked
It
about it
oh,
was
by far, it's
what?
his best movie, dude. Like, I'm sorry, I know you like Safe, but I'm looking at the movies that he has, and this is like
Yeah, I
usually I
know.
say, "Good
This
man,
is this is
he."
like one for the books. Like no one's gonna come back and
Yeah.
probably watch any of his other movies, but like Remember the Titans might be one of the biggest movies, like one of the thousand movies that's like really rewatched, and it's deservedly so.
Yeah, this one probably made him enough movie for the rest of his life on or made him enough money for the rest of his life, I would hope, because,
He
yeah,
probably didn't make
he's
enough money, but he got him enough sales. Like, oh, it's the guy who did Remember the Titans. So it's like it gets him in the room. No, but literally, that's what it has to be, right?
Yeah, that's what it has to be. You know, I kind of accidentally already talked about everything I was going to talk about during Legacies. The only thing I would want to add is what I already said is that Denzel just joins a long line of football coach performances, which I think is like a cool little. If I owned the movie Hall of Fame, let's say that existed, I would have a wing of the Hall of Fame dedicated to head coaches in movies, like head coach performances. And Denzel would be there with Gene Hackman and James Caan and Henry Lee Winkler and Al Pacino and Sam Jackson. Like that would be a wing of my Hall of Fame.
Not The Rock and the Gridiron Gang. That doesn't work.
No, it has to be good. And even like when I say Henry Winkler, I said that a little bit in jest because it's not like a good head coach performance. It's just a funny movie and a funny
Waterboy's
performance.
fantastic.
It is a fantastic movie. And if we almost could have just done that instead of this on the pod and
That's
it
some
would have been
high
fine
quality
too.
H2O. But
Yeah.
this is Denzel. He's Got Game with Spike. He did the Hurricane boxing movie, and then he also did this. So he was on a bit of a streak with like sports movies in the late '90s, early 2000s. But I mean, it's like Denzel, he's got a great career and he's always chosen specific things to do that actually matter to the culture. And this is one of those special movies. Even I think he did Training Day after this, Antoine Fisher, John Q, which underrated movie. But he's done so many interesting things that relate to culture, whether they need to or not. And Denzel will always be the GOAT for that. Like Denzel has the best legacy out of all these people because he's one of the people that we actually like. People, if you say Denzel, I don't even have to say Denzel Washington. It's Denzel. Everybody knows Denzel.
I do want to just call out a few other things. A lot of the football players, actors in this movie did actually go on to have like decent careers as just like
Yeah,
actors. Like they're not big actors, but like Ryan Hurst, who plays Gary, shows up in things still. Wood Harris does. I believe Craig Kirkwood might be in a few things. The only Ryan Gosling obviously, but this was just I he was barely in this movie and honestly was like the what eighth character basically.
but
So
he's fantastic. Like even in the little moment of when they're singing like "Ain't No Mountain High Enough" in the locker room, and he's just like
you
like
know,
just you can do it.
it's
I'm
a
like,
little
this
it's
is very Ryan.
he's a little too Mickey Mouse Club. I don't know. It just doesn't I honestly, like, I feel like his performance in this doesn't actually make sense to me, but also, like, he wasn't given much to do,
Oh
so I'm
yeah.
not gonna hold.
At the
Yeah.
beginning, he's like, "Oh, the kid, something happened. The kid got shot," and like they're rolling up to like essentially like try to like be they're being the racist trying to beat up people. That's the
Yeah.
beginning of his role. I was like, "Whoa, I forgot
Yeah,
about this."
it's kind of a weird, but so I did wanna say Hayden Panettiere, she actually did pop off a little bit after this. She was, I think, in
Oh
was it
yeah,
Nashville? Was that the TV show that she was in that was pretty big? She also had some roles in, like, I Love You, Beth Cooper, and a few others. She didn't, like, pop off huge, but she did have some, like, successful stuff and,
Scream.
has had a solid
Yeah.
career. Scream,
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
So,
But
I
Wood
props.
Harris, Wood Harris is in he's in the Creed movies, and he's the
Okay.
coach that I'll send you the clip. He's the one that's training. He's training Donis. He's treating Donnie when Rocky leaves, and he's like, "Oh, he's like, are you ready?" He's like, we'll see." And he's pulling out a little bit of that Coach Boone in that moment. I'll show you the clip because the clip is fantastic. The one that surprised me was Ryan Hurst because I've seen Ryan Hurst in 4 or 5 different shows, and I didn't realize it was him. Like that's
Okay.
like he has full on beard and full on like long hair that you would not recognize this man because
I
he
kinda
looks
actually
like a
need to
dude
look
from
him up.
because like he looks like the guy from Sons of Anarchy and he is in Sons of Anarchy but like he looks like a guy who would ride a motorcycle. That's his vibe. And I'm talking about I watch a lot of really like different stuff. He's been in SWAT. He plays a character's brother in that. He's in Bates Motel for a really good stint. He's had a lot of like random like TV roles. He was in House among all sorts of other stuff, and I'm just like, oh yeah, I know this guy. I didn't realize I knew the guy, but I do know the guy. So I'm just glad
Yet
he's getting work.
another
He's a
yet
great
another
actor.
great actor that was cast in Saving Private Ryan. I mean, that has maybe one of the most stacked top to bottom cast of all time. It's pretty insane.
Yep.
Of just like people showing up for stuff. Like you got Giamatti just showing up and Ted Danson just showing up, like stuff like that. And he's in that too. I love him and you know, Remember the Titans. I absolutely adore him in that movie. He's probably my second favorite actor in that movie outside of Denzel.
The person that plays Petey, Donald Faison, you know him from I know him from Scrubs. He's fantastic in Scrubs. He's in Big Fat
Yeah.
Liar, Sean Levy's Big Fat Liar, and he is fantastic in that too. He's playing an actor. It's hilarious. I think the big one, the other two that I want to bring up is Ethan Suplee, who he plays Elastic. The man has lost so much weight now. He looks completely different. I just saw him in there's a movie with he's a trailer for a movie. What's his name? Kit Harrington, Jon Snow. He's in a movie with him now. And I'm like, this man is playing completely different roles. He doesn't get necessarily the same, level of stuff, obviously, but he was in My Name is Earl for a hot minute and he's working. So I mean, I'm just glad to hear that. You remember Minari, right? Mirari?
Yeah. Mhm.
So Will Patton comes in that movie, and that man should have been nominated for an Oscar. Honestly,
Is he the
as
older guy in
he's the
Minari?
guy yeah, he's the guy helping them like build a farm, and then on the Sundays he's like
Oh,
carrying the cross down the road. That guy
that's him?
is Will Patton. Yes.
Oh, I didn't realize that
He's
was
in
Will Patton.
Horizon this year too. He was in Horizon. I was like, yo, I'm like,
Yeah,
that's my man right there.
Will Patton gets good work. Like he's a solid like
Uh
he's not a character actor, but he's like a great
he's a
like
character
solid
actor,
just
yeah.
actor to show up and stuff. Yeah, maybe he is a character actor, honestly.
He's in Silo for Apple with Rebecca Ferguson and David
Yeah,
Oyelowo.
yeah, he is.
Silo is actually really good. So
Mhm.
it's like he gets good things once in a while, and he still has the juice. That juice ain't never left him. That's for sure. But I'm just that it's rare for for these movies to have good legacies, and this movie definitely has it. We talked about Philip Rousselet, like even he as a cinematographer has a great career after this, and whether the movies were good or not, but it's like I'm just glad these people have gone somewhere because it's rare because there's a lot more people like Blue, Rev, all these other people of color especially, they don't get good roles in Hollywood in the first place. It's hard for them to get them, but some of them have gotten them. So, I mean, I'm glad. And obviously, it's Denzel pulling them up, man. Denzel has done so much for people, and we don't even know probably what he's done. So I
Yeah.
always appreciate him having a hand even behind the camera of like the stories he's trying to tell. Okay, MVP. Who put the team on their? This is actually for the first time I can say who put the team on their back. I don't. It ain't coach. Okay, who put the team on their back? Who you the MVP, mom? Like who's the MVP for this movie for Remember the Titans?
I mean, for me, this is a no-brainer. It's Denzel, no question. This is Denzel in his prime, and he's given the perfect role to do what he does best in a PG movie. It's
I mean,
Denzel. I turn this on for
but
Denzel every time.
I don't even think it has to be PG. I think it's just one of his best roles. Like it's the best role he's had in a PG movie, but even then, it's one of his best roles. Period.
Well, it's significant that it's a PG movie because he's doing the same stuff he does in R-rated movies typically,
Exactly.
but the fact he
Exactly.
can
It's not a
still
bad
do it
thing.
he can
Yeah.
still do it in a PG movie is significant, and that's why I call it out. But he takes the he really especially in the first half of the movie, he really takes it over. Now in the second half, they give the other actors more time, but the first half of the movie is just all Denzel, and he's the one that grabs you and gets you invested in the movie from the jump, and that's why it's so important.
That's interesting because it's like this is essentially like a Marvel movie, except they invest you
Don't
within
say
Boone
that.
and the no, no, no. It's a
Don't say
Marvel
that.
movie in the sense that like this is a movie with a bunch of cornball stuff that actually is genuine and it has a whole bunch of characters, but it uses the elements of music, it uses the elements of of a fantastic script, it uses fantastic actors, and all of that comes together to make a lasting effect of a movie, which I don't think Marvel has been able to do, even though they have the same amount of they have this production company. They have the same level of directors. They have the same level of stuff. They have more money, but they can't make Remember the Titans, man.
We
They ain't
can't
got soul
record
power.
we can't record a pod right after you saw a Marvel movie again.
My
We can't
bad.
do it. We
See,
can't do that.
people can love Deadpool, Wolverine as much as they do. Is no problem with me. It didn't work for me. I think it's funny. I think it's got really great moments in it, but it's like
It
this is actually cinema right here, man.
it's gonna
This
it's gonna be funny when we drop this in, like, September and people are like, "Why the hell are these guys talking about Deadpool? That was, like, 2 months ago."
what's this Deadpool
Yeah.
Wolverine like? That movie's
We already
irrelevant
moved
as it
on,
should
yeah.
be. Like that's the problem, right? These movies they come, they're relevant for a week and then they leave. It's done. It's out of people's minds. Remember the Titans will always be in my mind. We always remember the Titans, man.
Well, who's your MVP then?
The script. The MVP has to be the script because Gregory Allen Howard, who he among some of the other folks have passed away in this movie, but he is a writer. He wrote Harriet, which was that recent Harriet Tubman movie with Cynthia
Mhm,
Erivo, the one that's in
mhm.
she's in Widows, she's about to be in The Witch in The Wicked.
Yeah,
Cat's gonna
mhm,
eat that up.
yeah,
He wrote Ali. He wrote the story for Ali, but Remember the Titans is his best script. I think the
yeah.
script for this movie really works. I don't know what the integration of like the music exactly what the perspective does with that at least, but the script itself works. And Denzel gets that script, and I think that's what convinced him to do this movie. Because I think every single other thing, like behind the camera wise, doesn't really work. Like I don't think Jerry Bruckheimer. I think they produced him and Don Simpson produced Crimson Tide. But besides that, I mean, that's an R-rated movie in a different realm compared to what this is. And
Yeah.
for that's why I think the script really convinced Denzel to do this movie. And the script is giving, right? I mean, at every moment, it feels dramatic and it hits the drama. I've gone through and I saw what they say like are the inaccuracies of like the movie is like, oh, Boone was living in Virginia for like a year before he actually got there. But it's like for a movie, he has to show up right there. That's the only way it works, right? You know, dramatically. So it's like everything of like adapting this story into being something dramatic works.
Yeah.
And fun fact for anybody listening, in real life, they actually didn't have a racism issue on the team. They might have, but it wasn't like this. And when they went to Gettysburg, they actually did go to Gettysburg for this for the training camp. People brought weapons like tire irons and chains and stuff like that because that's what the tension was between everybody. So it's like they it almost feels like they were sugarcoating what happened in real life, but it's like the movie doesn't feel that sugarcoated. It actually brings up the elements and it tries to make a story that's compelling. And the script is, I mean, the script works. I mean, like, I don't know. You have Moneyball. I think that's the best script for any sports movie besides Rocky.
Okay, I was about to say, yeah, you gotta throw
Yeah.
Rocky in there.
Rocky,
Yeah.
you have Rocky, you have Remember the Titans, you have Creed and Moneyball. That's like four. I might have one that would come up
We're probably
later.
missing one, but yeah, I think that's right. Like, you can put Raging Bull in there and stuff
No,
like that
I'm gonna
too.
put Waterboy up in there. I'm gonna put Happy Gilmore, which are actually good movies because they have sports movies, and we're gonna talk about those later. Because like Adam Sandler's comedies used to be fantastic, man. Those two are
There's
legitimately fantastic
Hey,
movies.
if anybody's listening to this, I'm trying to convince Vikash to do Hubie Halloween for Halloween,
No,
and
no, okay. And you know what? Like someone like Tasha, she loves scores, but she loves Hubie Halloween, and I'm like, no, I watched the
hey,
movie.
I watched it for the
Yeah,
second time last year, and you know what? It's way better than I remember. It's funny. You just gotta remove that part of your brain that is critical and just enjoy
I
it.
that's fine. I do that all the time. I did it with Deadpool, but like but like I don't know. It worked. It was fine. I mean, it is what it is. But man, I yeah, Gregory Allen Howard, this is the best. This script is fantastic and I wish we had more movies like this. I really do. Where it's like use sports to like actually say something about the real world and make it fun, make it compelling,
Yeah.
make it emotional. And I don't know where people are going with movies. Like, come on, y'all. Like, y'all got they got the budgets to make these movies, man. And I think this is a $30 million movie. It's not exactly like some super expensive movie. I think it might be Jerry Bruckheimer. He's like the low key MVP of like Jerry Bruckheimer's productions for the most part. He might have some misses, but the man when he hits, he's
Yeah.
hit so many times. Bad Boys took a risk on Michael Bay, Will Smith, Martin Lawrence. It's a hit. Beverly Hills Cop, like you can go all the way back and come all the way to today. He still has his credits on, like freaking Top Gun Maverick. It's still one of the better movies of the last 10 years.
Yeah.
So, but I'm talking about a bunch of movies. Do you have any recommendations for this movie?
Yeah, so actually, I'm doing something a little different because I didn't want to just recommend you go watch another football movie or another Denzel movie. So I would
We
say,
are Marshall.
yeah, I would say just in terms of companion movies, if you have any interest in the sport of football and telling stories in the sport of football, go watch any of the ESPN 30 for 30 docs.
30 for 30.
Those are some of the best sports docs ever made. The Best That Never Was is a good one. The one about SMU and the death penalty, we call it the death penalty. It's that the program was suspended for a whole year. That's another good one. There's a bunch of really, really good sports documentaries, and those 30 for 30s tell a story that even if you're not a sports fan, you will find a way to be invested in because they're human stories at the end of the day. So that would be my suggestion if you enjoyed the sports angle of this movie.
I would say to just watch more Denzel movies because he's got so many
Yeah.
great movies. If you haven't seen movies like Antoine Fisher, John Q, things he's got game. He's got plenty of movies that are fantastic. I'd recommend Minari. That's from 2020. Fantastic movie. Will Patton's in it for like 15 minutes, but the movie is fantastic. Twisters just came out. It's that same director. Very small movie, intimate movie, but it's emotional story. Fantastic movie. I would recommend Origin, which I keep doing recently, but it's like it's got the same thing of like it's trying to tell a story, but it's also got a very emotional basis that's based within what we the dehumanization and racism and things that are we deal with in our world. And it's a movie and it really takes you there and brings you right back emotionally and highly recommended. And Obviously, like I said, rewatch Remember the Titans. That's all it
Yeah.
is. Just rewatch this movie. If y'all thought that y'all think this movie's good, go watch it again because I think it might be better. I think it ages well. Like this is one of those movies where it's like this, like you said, if it was corny and it wasn't good, we wouldn't be talking about it 24 years later. But this is a movie where it's like people put this on in classes, and this is one of those movies where it's like, yeah, like that's one of the better movies I saw in a classroom.
The takeaway I want anybody from listening to this pod to have, and I had to learn this myself, is that it's okay for a movie to be corny. It's okay. It's okay
See,
to like it's okay to like it, and it's okay for
I'm
it to
Indian.
decide to be corny.
We have Bollywood movies where the dramaticism is out the roof, and the entire point of doing that is to get to actual like character moments or character like emotional moments, and we use every single one of these elements of like music and the visuals and the acting. Everything comes together to make some pretty emotional moments, and that's what this movie is. I like it. This is just Bollywood, but it's football. Now we gonna make the football. They're gonna make. They're even dancing in this movie. This is a Bollywood movie. Remember the Times is a Bollywood
That
movie.
should have
That's
been
what
your
it
hot
is.
take.
Alrighty, peace and love, y'all. We'll see you next time. Get ready for the new NFL season, NCAA. We're gonna have some fun this year. Bye.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Cinema Pursuit. Cinema Pursuit is produced by Katie Nadell, Zach Nadell, and Vikash Patel. Special thanks to Cole Cooper for the intro and outro music. You can listen to Cinema Pursuit on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever else you may listen to podcasts. Follow us on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram at Cinema Pursuit Podcast, Twitter or X at Cin Pursuit Pod, and check out our subreddit, r/Cinema Pursuit.